Greetings to all the fans. What would a girl do if she was the cutest one in the entire school, who had always been admired by everyone and who had never known rejection in her life? But one day, a new boy appeared at school who not only did not fawn over her, but actually looked at her with disgust. And she, like every unattainable and empowered girl, tried every possible way to make this boy fall in love with her and become just another one of her admirers. Although let me tell you, it was going to be a little difficult. Well, this is more or less what the anime My Charms Are Wasted on Kuroiwa Medaka is about. The anime begins by showing us our protagonist, named Mona Kawai, who had been declared the cutest girl of all since she was born, and as she grew up, people only reaffirmed that she was the most beautiful of all, since absolutely everyone was dying to play with her, or at least receive a little bit of her attention. So she had grown up with a gigantic ego, which lasted until adolescence, meaning until now at 17 years old. To maintain that status, she always treated everyone well, since she had to be the cutest to be the most beloved. However, she had a classmate who did not fawn over her like the others, and that guy was named Medaka. He was super indifferent toward her, which angered her other classmates greatly, since because of this indifference, Mona always paid more attention to him to try to turn him into one of her admirers like the rest of the boys. And if she did not succeed, her queen bee ego would be affected. However, in the 2 weeks that had passed since Medaka transferred, he had never smiled at her or anything. Moreover, whenever he looked at her, he did so with an angry face. Obviously, he was not a bitter person, since when he looked at his cell phone, he smiled like any normal person and even liked photos of kittens. But one day, Mona tried to use this kitten interest to conquer him. She role-played as a kitten to get his attention, but instead of going well, it went terribly, since she only earned more indifference from him, and he even told her not to speak to him again. Upon hearing this, Mona and her admirers froze, since they could not believe that a being existed who could resist her charms. Mona, for her part, was the most affected, so she ran out of there. Since all her life she had always been admired by boys, even without doing anything. But this time, when she had tried to make a small effort, she was rejected in the worst way. So, she could not allow this to continue, so she took the matter of seducing Medaka very personal. As a first attempt, she stood in a high place to show off her figure to Medaka, but he ignored her and continued on his way with his classic grumpy face. Because she failed in the worst way possible, she decided to get him alone. So she pretended to be sick and asked the teacher to have Medaka take her to the infirmary. The teacher, being quite foolish, agreed without much of a problem. So Medaka had to take her. But as soon as the two were alone, Mona threw herself at him to seduce him in the least discreet way possible, cornering him and telling him that she only wanted them to get along well. Unfortunately for her, not even with her right in his face did Medaka change that grumpy expression. So she tried to lead him to the bed to talk, but she ended up tripping and falling on top of Medaka. This was incredibly shameless, even for her, but not even with this extreme move did she manage to make him change his expression. So Mona decided to sacrifice her pride just to make Medaka nervous, meaning she took off her shirt to show him the two big assets she had. Obviously, Mona could not handle the shame, but Medaka did not even flinch. So our protagonist threw a tantrum, since she could not accept that Medaka did not find her attractive after everything she had done. He left to return to the classroom, but before leaving, he told Mona that those kinds of things should only be done with guys she seriously liked, which was a huge blow to Mona. So in the end, it was she who had received the Cupid's arrow, and clearly she did not like this at all. So she swore to herself again that she would make him fall in love at any cost. The next day, Mona's ego returned thanks to everyone's praise. However, Medaka continued, treating her like just another person. However, she had faith in gym class, since a girl with such a good body as hers was the ultimate temptation, although for Medaka she was not. They continued the gym class until Mona reached her definitive level, meaning the point where she was all sweaty, and therefore it was the most appetizing moment for the boys' eyes. Although once again, for everyone except Medaka. This indifference was too much for Mona, so she went out to drink some water, where she met Medaka again, and upon seeing him, she became even more angry at how little he looked at her. However, when she drank from the fountain, Medaka turned red as a tomato, which surprised Mona so much that she accidentally ended up getting all wet. But Medaka did not lose control or anything. Rather, he gave his shirt to Mona so she would not catch a cold. So in the end, the one who ended up blushing was her. When classes ended, Medaka's classmates, named Sho and Yuzuru, intercepted Medaka to ask him why he was so indifferent toward Mona, since they were her biggest admirers, and therefore wanted him to be a little nicer to her, since Mona always tried to get along well with him, but only received dirty looks from him. Medaka replied that he did not do it to be rude or anything like that, but because he was the heir to a temple, so he had to stay away from temptations, meaning from girls. To perfect that skill, they had sent him to a co-ed school, but Mona was so cute that he had to concentrate 100% to not succumb to lust, meaning he was holding back, which was, well, absolutely understandable understandable for his classmates. So they understood why he made an annoyed face every time Mona spoke to him. Then we see that Mona returned his washed shirt, so she took the opportunity to tempt Medaka, saying that it was a shame, since that way he would not have it with her womanly scent. However, Medaka began to recite his creed to concentrate, which Mona continued to interpret as him ignoring her. But for his friends, it made much more sense now, since it was too obvious that he was only trying not to lose control. Hours later came art class, so Medaka had to paint Mona, and therefore he had to look at her closely. Mona seized this great opportunity to make him nervous, so she asked him what pose he wanted, and to top it off, she warned him no nudes. But Medaka looked at her with a sour face, so her little act to make him nervous had failed. Even so, she did not give up, since if he did not choose the pose, she would, and she had the best ones prepared for him. Although then she remembered that what made him nervous was seeing her drink water, so she struck a similar pose. Medaka was already at his limit with his self-control, so seeing her in a pose that could easily be that of a model left him on the verge of losing control. But luckily, he managed to regain his composure just in time to draw her. Mona then realized that a classmate named Haruno was staring at her, which was quite uncomfortable. But the one who was also staring at her was Medaka, which was even worse, since she was too embarrassed that he was looking at her neck with such a serious gaze. That was why Mona ran out of the classroom to regain her own composure. And meanwhile, Medaka remained with his drawing almost finished, which had so much detail that it surprised his classmates, since it even seemed like he had put all his will into it. After classes, Medaka went to the library for an assignment. Then, Mona pretended that they met by chance to seduce him, but it did not work, since he did not even look at her. At that moment, Mona realized that Haruno was staring at him, so Mona started to believe that she was not looking at her, but at Medaka, meaning she supposedly had competition. That put Mona on high alert, since someone could steal her prey. But imitating someone with Haruno's appearance was very simple for her, so she pretended to be a quiet reader who only enjoyed her book and nothing else, which now really made Medaka very nervous. But he quickly composed himself and decided to leave so as not to succumb to Mona's beauty. This was a hard blow for our protagonist. However, she did not intend to let anyone steal Medaka, so she started observing Haruno very closely to know what kind of woman she was, and she ended up seeing that she was a sweetheart, and to top it off was very kind and attentive, meaning exactly the opposite of her. To top it off, Haruno also had good attributes, especially the chest, but she was also modest, so she was like Mona's ultimate nemesis. Meanwhile, she lamented having a super difficult arch-enemy to defeat when Sho passed by to give her a book that Mona had asked for. So Mona spoke to him super sweetly and even told him that she loved him, which she had never done with Medaka. Then it occurred to her that being how she is with everyone might be the best way to make him nervous at this point. Then she went to the rooftop and arrived casually, as if it were an accident that they met there. Then she thanked him for all the times he had lent her a hand and tried to finish with an "I love you." But this time the phrase did not come out of her mouth, no matter how much she tried. Mona obviously started to get nervous, since it was something she said to her admirers day and night. But with Medaka, for some reason, she could not do it. So she got frustrated and ran away completely defeated. A while later, both returned to the classroom, but Mona's frustration continued, since she still had not managed to make him fall in love as she had planned. And to top it off, now she had an arch enemy who, by the coincidences of life, ended up being her partner as those in charge of the classroom for the school festival. Because of this, they had to meet after class, but Haruno was so good that she spoke to Mona as if they were lifelong friends, even though Mona was glaring daggers at her, since she could not stand good and super kind girls like Haruno. Then, the latter got nervous out of nowhere with her cell phone, so Mona's curiosity chip turned on, and she asked her to show her her phone. Haruno refused as much as she could, and even ran to prevent Mona from seeing her cell phone. But Mona was faster. Besides, she believed it had to do with Medaka, so she chased her while yelling that she would not let her keep her man, and in the end, she managed to take the cell phone from her. Then she realized that she had her as the wallpaper screen, since she was a fan of Mona and not Medaka. This was quite embarrassing for Haruno, but Mona was not bothered at all, since she was used to admirers. However, due to the excitement, she said not to mess with her Medaka, so she tried to cover it up, saying she referred to her fish. But the excuse was so bad that Haruno said, "Wow, so that's how it is," while showing her support for her to conquer Medaka, since it was noticeable from miles away how much she liked him. Days passed and Mona's class decided to do a cosplay cafe, so they needed costumes. Luckily, Haruno's sister was in the drama club, so it was not difficult to get ready-made costumes. So after class, they stopped by the drama club and saw everything available. Then, Haruno mentioned to Mona that she would support her so that she could hold Medaka's hand on the Bridge of Love. But Mona had no idea what that bridge was, so Haruno told her about the legend of the bridge they had at that school, since it was said that if you held the hand of the person you liked on that bridge, their love would be eternal. So upon hearing this, Mona became very nervous, since she kept insisting that she felt nothing for Medaka. Shortly after, Haruno's sister called her to talk about some things, about clothes, so Mona was left alone with the costumes. And because of this, it occurred to her that maybe she could make Medaka fall in love with a costume, but none convinced her, since if she wanted to provoke something in him, she needed to be bolder. So she put on the bunny costume, which was undoubtedly the boldest of all, but not the right one to seduce. Medaka, since we remember that in the infirmary, Mona discovered that overt advances did not matter to him. By misfortune for her, he appeared out of nowhere to give her some papers. So he saw her in that super embarrassing costume, and as if that was not bad enough, Haruno was returning. So Mona imagined Haruno's typical lecture, telling her how much she loved Medaka to put that on and show it to him. She did not want this, since it would affect her reputation as unattainable, so she hid next to Medaka as fast as she could. Meanwhile, Haruno started to wonder where Mona was, but just then her sister looked for her again, and she left. So as soon as she did, Mona and Medaka came out of their hiding spot. She thought that being so close for so long had made him nervous, but Medaka's face said the exact opposite, so Mona thought that this costume looked horrible. However, Medaka thought it looked cute on her, so he told her so and left, thus leaving our protagonist red as a tomato. By the next day, Mona was much calmer, so she thought that now things would change, since Medaka accepted that she was cute. However, nothing could be further from the truth, since the guy had received her with the most serious face possible, which defeated Mona's ego once again. In that way, the days passed until the day of the festival arrived, where the girls dressed as bunnies, but only for the ears. And it was a success thanks to Mona being the one pulling in the customers. Medaka, for his part, was in the kitchen, so Mona went to try to get him out of there so he could take a little break to eat. However, he did not want to accompany Mona anywhere, so he coldly ate one of the dishes he had made and said he was not hungry. This angered our waifu greatly, since she went from thinking she had already conquered him to being further than ever from doing so. However, Haruno did her a solid by sending Medaka to bring in people together with Mona, since this was a way to make them walk together, even if it was not officially that. Meanwhile, Mona thought about what to do to conquer him and saw how he was mesmerized by the haunted house, so she decided to enter there, to make him fall in love with her shy but cute acting. Although this house of terror was so well done that it had seriously given Mona the scare of her life, so while she was screaming like crazy, Medaka was extremely happy, seeing how realistic everything was, since being from a temple he found these representations of cemeteries, temples, and ghosts very interesting. Unfortunately for her, Mona got trapped in one of the tombstones, and he was doing his own thing, so Mona had to force her skirt to stretch her arm and ask for help, which caused her to unintentionally show too much. Due to this, Mona had to run away super ashamed, although when she calmed down, they returned the tombstone and continued their tour of the school. So our protagonist decided that they would both do what she wanted, since if Medaka kept proposing what he liked, she was not going to stand it. However, no matter how many different plans they made at the school, Medaka did not seem interested in getting close to Mona, so he just walked away again and again. This made Mona almost give up. However, she ended up arriving by chance at the Bridge of Love, so she remembered the legend that Haruno had told her. Meanwhile, her classroom was suffering, since without Medaka there was no one who cooked decently, although they were not the only ones who wanted him back, since a girl named Saki had gone to see him, but in the end it was not possible. Returning to Mona, she panicked, since everyone was surprised to see her with Medaka, and if after seeing them together they assumed they were a couple, well, they would become fans of their relationship like Haruno, which would leave our protagonist's ego on the floor. So she thought quickly to tell everyone that she was only there to invite them to the cafe they had made in her class. This made a lot of sense to her fans, so they decided to go to the cafe. However, Mona did not intend to waste this opportunity, since she could still hold Medaka's hand without needing to humiliate herself publicly. For this, she pretended she had fallen and every man would give her a hand in that situation, so it was checkmate, or at least that was what Mona had thought, since Medaka went overboard and lifted her by the armpits, which left our waifu quite red, since this was even more embarrassing. Anyway, her goal was to make him fall in love regardless of whether it was on the bridge or at the festival, but that also went quite wrong for her, since her classmates called him to help at the cafe, since after Mona's promotion on the bridge, all the couples had filled the cafe and they could not keep up. Due to this, Mona did not have another chance that day, so she put on a defeated face. However, Haruno did not plan to let her give up so easily, so she sent them to put away a table together. Mona was also super depressed, since she had already given it her all during the day, and at that moment she was so depressed that she had not even noticed where she was going, so she accidentally crashed into some boxes, and one of those almost fell on her head. This did not happen only because Medaka saved her, but for that, he had to grab grab her by the hand, and they were right on the bridge of love, so it could be intuited that both had fulfilled the spell. However, both convinced themselves that this was not real, since the festival had already passed, so the spell should not work anymore. Anyway, it was quite embarrassing for Mona, so the next day she almost could not look at Medaka. However, it was obvious that she was advancing in her conquest, so she worked up the courage to treat him as always. Just then, her friends mentioned to Mona that this afternoon they were going bowling to celebrate the end of the festival. So our waifu saw the perfect opportunity to conquer Medaka, since if it did not work alone, in a group maybe it would. That is why she showed off at bowling, so he would high-five her. However, when the moment came, both remembered the hand-holding, so Mona chickened out at the last second. Clearly she did not want things to stay like that, so she stepped away for a bit, and after calming down, she returned to deal the final attack, meaning the indirect kiss. This was not easy at all, but Mona was determined to give it her all, so she managed to drink from Medaka's drink. However, when it was his turn, he saved himself trouble and told her she could have it, since he no longer wanted it, which left Mona looking like a fool. All her effort went down the drain because of Medaka's disdain. The next day, this same disdain continued when Mona approached him and recommended using sleeves to warm his fingers, since Medaka told her that the cold did not bother him, and this had removed any option of starting a conversation with him. This angered his friends quite a bit, since he was being too harsh with her. So they summoned him behind the school, and Sho told him to be a little nicer, since his dogma told him he could not fall in love, not that he had to treat her like trash. Well, which made a little sense. Yuzuru, for his part, did not want to say too much, since if Medaka got serious, he was too powerful a rival. But equally, he thought that treating girls badly was not part of his religion, so he could put a little effort into it. With the words of these two, well, Medaka was a little thoughtful, but Haruno finished off saying that Mona was the most kindest person in the school, so treating her as badly as he did was something unforgivable, which made Medaka rethink a lot of things. Since when you saw her from afar, she indeed was someone who seemed very kind to everyone. That is why he decided to be a little nicer to her, and started by offering her his book as soon as he saw that Mona had forgotten hers. But she got so excited about Medaka's initiative that she almost threw herself at him, table and all, which scared our protagonist quite a bit. Mona was also super embarrassed since, for the first time, Medaka was taking the initiative and she acted too desperate. However, he himself returned and joined their tables, since he had only been scared by how fast she approached, since, regarding love, he was confident that he could treat her well without falling in love, although inadvertently, he ended up making our waifu the happiest woman in the school. Thanks to this, she started to believe that she was finally making progress. So the next day, she left her house with the confidence to seduce Medaka, just by work and grace of destiny. She met him in the rain while he was waiting for it to stop, so she spoke to him to ask if he did not have an umbrella. He replied no, since he had left it for some kittens that were getting wet, which only made her fall in love much more. But she maintained her concentration on seducing Medaka, since just the fact that he did not look at her badly after greeting him proved that it was her golden opportunity to make him fall in love. That is why she told him that they could go together, which Medaka accepted, only because he did not want to be insensitive toward her. But the contact was too much, so Mona had to keep her distance. Obviously, she wanted to know how close she could get to be able to seduce him correct. However, at that moment, she realized that Medaka was getting wet to cover her, so she went back into crazy in love mode for a moment, although she quickly went back to trying to get closer to continue measuring. Upon arriving, both were quite wet, so they decided to enter through the gym, which was a more covered area. So they saw the morning match of the basketball club in which the club star named Asahi was participating. She was simply unstoppable, but when she saw Medaka, she got quite nervous, so the ball almost hit Mona. Happily, Medaka managed to save her. However, Asahi did not apologize or anything, but told Mona that it was her fault for standing there drooling while watching a basketball game. This was super annoying, but Mona could not lose her cool, so she told her, yes, 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 with a little smile, to avoid problems. However, Asahi dragged her to a corner to talk alone, since she wanted to know if Mona was Medaka's girlfriend. She told her right away that she was not, but Asahi did not believe her, since they came with a single umbrella, and this could only be explained if she at least liked him. But her friends separated her since Asahi was being too intense with Mona. Due to this, she remained super thoughtful, since she did not understand why Asahi hated her so much, although she was sure that it was the worst possible moment for a rival to appear. So she started investigating. Curiously, Asahi was famous in the school, since Haruno knew her, and this was because she was a sports and academic prodigy, meaning she was the best of the first years. With so much praise, even Mona thought for a second that Asahi was incredible, so she started to worry a little. But well, at least Medaka did not seem to know her. However, Asahi appeared right in the classroom looking for Mona, so she could finish answering her question. Unfortunately for Asahi, Medaka appeared right then, so she got quite nervous nervous and her personality changed completely, since she went from being a super aggressive and brave girl to a girl who could not even pronounce 3 consecutive words. That caused her to fall from embarrassment and therefore show her panties to Medaka. So she immediately ran away because of the humbling moment she had just experienced. Although the one most affected by this had been Mona, who did not understand how she could make such a strong arch-enemy just when the conquest of Medaka seemed to be bearing fruit. The next day, Mona still could not believe that there was a woman who could declare war like Asahi. However, she seemed very determined, so she appeared again in Medaka's classroom to try to talk to him. But again, she turned red as a tomato, and to top it off, Mona did not intend to leave him alone. So Asahi could not do much more than say good morning to him, and even that with quite a lot of embarrassment. After a little while, Medaka started to feel curiosity about Asahi, since he even remembered her name, which made Mona nervous, since if by chance, destiny he liked girls like Asahi, her entire conquest plan was going to go down the drain. Due to this, she got to work and started to show Medaka that Asahi was not the only one good at basketball, so she had to give a show of skill and beauty as usual. After gym class, Medaka lost the bet to see who would pick up all the balls, so he had to stay all alone. However, Mona did not let him be alone. Besides, she wanted Medaka to improve his shot since he was terrible at basketball. To teach him the correct posture, she got close and told him how it was done, but even she knew she was being too provocative. Unfortunately for Mona, Asahi saw them with their hands in the cookie jar, so she accused her of being a liar for telling her that she did not, like Medaka. However, she continued denying everything and giving the worst excuse of all, meaning that she was only teaching him how to throw the ball. Clearly, Asahi did not believe a single word, so she also decided to teach him to throw the ball and to do it well. Well, he needed good abs, so she told him to do planks together with her. Medaka accepted all innocently, but when he went down, he realized that Asahi's cleavage was visible, so he started to get a little nervous. However, Mona did not help, since when she also joined the routine, she saw Asahi's intentions and started to compete against her, since in terms of body, well, no one beat her. So Medaka did not know where to look. Asahi, for her part, did not intend to let Mona win, so she told him that surely he preferred them smaller like hers, which ended the poor Medaka's endurance. So he had to run away for the good of his chastity, leaving Asahi and Mona super embarrassed, since the two had crossed the line to try to conquer Medaka. The next day, Medaka was absent due to a cold, and everyone blamed it on the fact that he had run off with wet clothes from the gym. However, if it was about being wet, well, Mona had soaked him during the day by sharing the umbrella, so it was kind of her fault. That is why she decided to follow Medaka's friends, who planned to go visit him to see that he was okay. Although Mona was not the only one who decided to go in secret, since Asahi was also waiting for classes to end to go to Medaka's house. Then after class, Mona followed her admirers as she had planned, but she was quickly found by Asahi, so the plan of entering alone and in secret was no longer going to work. To top it off, she was still saying that she did not like Medaka, and going to the house of a boy secretly to take care of him, well, is not something you do for just any boy. Besides, Mona was unpredictable, so Asahi did not intend to leave her alone. That is why both entered Medaka's house, which was the worst thing for the poor boy, since controlling his instincts with Mona was already difficult, but now he also had Asahi as a bonus. That is why Medaka tried to say that he would be fine alone. However, Mona beat him to it and measured his temperature with her forehead, so this made poor Medaka nervous, although inside he kept saying that he did not like her and that she was only trying to make him fall in love on a whim. Asahi, for her part, also wanted to help, so she asked Medaka to borrow his kitchen, although cooking was something that was not among her talents. So in the end, Mona had to do most of the work. To not lose against her, Asahi tried to put cooling patches on him, but Mona did not want her to leave her out either, so she also put some on him, which only caused them to put too many on him, and Medaka went from feeling very hot to very cold. To fix it, Mona put on her nurse outfit, since who does not want a nurse to take care of you in your own house? However, Asahi stole the doctor outfit that Mona brought as a spare, and, well, she also came out looking seductive to take care of him. But luckily Medaka had ended up falling asleep, so both removed their outfits and began to reflect on what they were doing with their lives, since doing cosplay for the boy they liked was too much. Mona, above all, did not understand why Asahi did so much. Then she asked her what drove her to compete so much with her, and well, the answer was obvious. She simply liked Medaka, which seemed like a silly reason to Mona, since she believed she was exposing herself to a struggle that was too hard just for a feeling. However, Asahi wanted a future with Medaka. Unfortunately, admitting it was too embarrassing, so she went out to buy some things to be able to breathe. Although, during that time, Mona had Medaka in her hands. However, the latter got up from one moment to the next, while we see that Asahi was just returning and was thinking about the simple way in which she had fallen in love, since it was exactly in the way she always criticized, meaning love at first sight. Now, returning to Mona, she had received Medaka in her arms, but not because he wanted a bear hug, but because he was dreaming. Therefore, he quickly went back to bed, and Mona realized that he was so defenseless that stealing a kiss would be a simple task. So, she started to get closer little by little, but in the end she was too embarrassed to do it. Unfortunately, he saw her super close to Medaka, so she thought the worst. She took Mona outside to accuse her of lying about her feelings, since it was obvious that she liked Medaka. Our protagonist replied that she did not, that she was simply annoyed because Medaka was the only one who ignored her. Our protagonist replied that she did not, since she said that she was simply annoyed because Medaka was the only one who ignored her, and that was why she wanted to make him fall in love. But this clearly was only an excuse. So Asahi intuited that not even Mona herself had realized her own feelings. This might sound quite ridiculous, but the truth was that Asahi could not criticize her that much, since at the end of the day, she could not control herself when she was close to him. Then, she promised not to tell anyone about what she had just seen, and so they returned to take care of Medaka. Unfortunately for Mona, now Asahi had gained a lot of confidence to approach her, and as usual, Asahi could read Mona's mind, so she could not act like the nice Mona that everyone loved in front of her. To top it off, when Medaka's friends asked what Asahi was doing there, she coldly told them that she knew Mona, since both had previously gone to take care of Medaka the past afternoon when he was sick. So Mona had to play along and pretend that both were friends. However, that made Haruno very jealous, because she had arrived first and Mona still did not even call her by her name, but with Asahi she did do so. After a while, Medaka arrived at the classroom, so Asahi got nervous as usual and returned to her classroom. But this time, Asahi was not the only one who blushed with Medaka, but Mona also started to act strange when having him close, because hearing Asahi say that she liked Medaka had affected her more than she believed. That is why she started to avoid him at all costs, and for several days, which she did not want, but simply could not avoid doing. After many self-sabotages, she fainted, so Medaka caught her and took her to the infirmary, since Mona had a cold, and it was most likely that she caught it when going to take care of Medaka. Due to that, he apologized for all the problems he was causing Mona, but unintentionally gave her the perfect excuse to not have to admit that she liked Medaka, since she convinced herself that she was, acting so strange because of the fever, and not because she was in love with him. A day later, Sho grabbed Medaka's cell phone and changed his wallpaper to an image of a girl in a bikini, since this pervert believed that this was the most normal thing. However, Medaka did not want to see that wallpaper, so he went to delete it. Meanwhile, Haruno told Mona that she had sent a photo of her to Medaka, since it seemed like a good idea to hook him. However, the photo she had sent was one where Mona looked terrible, so she asked her to delete it immediately, although for her bad luck, Haruno's battery just ran out, so she could not do it. Due to this, Mona did not hesitate for a second and went to look for Medaka, who was just chilling while trying to delete that photo, but he also wanted to see it one last time. Just then the message arrived, although he could not open it since he had to show the wallpaper and could not do it there. So he ran to a place where no one could see him, and luckily a girl told Mona where Medaka had gone, so she chased him and caught up with him on the rooftop. Luckily for our waifu, Medaka had prioritized giving one last look at the bikini photo rather than Haruno's message, so he had not yet read her message. Therefore, Mona was able to delete the photo before he saw it. However, then she saw the photo on his screen, so she was left speechless and left angry, since she believed that she was cuter than the girl in the bikini, and that is why she got super jealous. While she complained about why he went with images of other girls having her right there, she heard how Medaka scolded his friends for putting that photo on his cell phone, so the light returned to her eyes. Another thing she had also heard was that a real man had to put a girl as his wallpaper. Then Mona did not waste time and took a selfie to send to Medaka. However, he only put on his tough face to not lose control and deleted it, which greatly angered his friends and Mona. Just then, Haruno appeared with a pumpkin, since Halloween was close, and therefore she wanted to see our waifu in costume. However, that also gave Mona a winning idea, since at a costume party she could surprise him with something that he liked. That is why she organized a Halloween party with the whole class, which everyone absolutely loved, and that is why they agreed to meet at Yuzuru's house. Medaka, for his part, was not so sure, since parties were not his thing, but social pressure was stronger, so he had no choice but to accept. Now Mona only had to choose the perfect costume, so she organized a gathering on the weekend for everyone to look for their costumes, which could be taken as a group date, but they told Medaka not to think nonsense, since they were only going shopping. As soon as she arrived, Mona left everyone shocked shocked, since her presence and beauty stood out even more with casual clothes, but she could not enjoy it for long, since Asahi appeared thanks to the fact that Yuzuru had told her about the party and invited her for being a friend of Mona. She obviously could not say anything due to her kind personality, so she limited herself to looking for a costume. However, it seemed more like a photo session and fan service for Haruno, since Mona only tried on everything she asked her to. Obviously, this was not her goal, so she went to see what the others were choosing, and that is why she saw Asahi choosing in the sexy section, something that had never worked for Mona. Therefore, she stopped watching her since she was confident that her experience trying to make Medaka fall in love would give her the victory. Luckily for Asahi, her friend Minami appeared, and it turns out that she had been the one who had helped Asahi get invited to that party, so she assumed she would have trouble choosing her costume. Just as she thought, Asahi did not know what to wear, so she also gave her a hand to choose her costume, focusing more than anything on her and not on Medaka. Now, returning to Mona, she started listening to Medaka's conversation with his friends, since they started talking about what he liked in girls' costumes. However, our waifu made a little noise, so Medaka went to check and almost found her, but Mona thought fast and pretended to be a horsehead like the ones that were around there. Thanks to this, she was saved, and as a double prize, she saw Medaka pointing out his favorite costume. So as soon as the boys left, she ran straight to look for what the costume was. But she got a big surprise that it was ridiculously daring, even too much for her. Curiously, when it came to conquering Medaka, Mona knew no limits or shame. So when they all showed what they had chosen as a costume, our waifu broke everyone's eyes, showing them her costume of a mummy, which only covered the parts that were necessary, so it caused a lot of embarrassment to both her and Medaka. Unfortunately, this had not even been the one Medaka had chosen, since he was more a fan of something childish like a little bee costume. So Mona realized that it was for nothing, and that is why she pretended that she was only joking with that costume. As expected, everyone believed her. So Mona regained her confidence and set the Halloween party as the big day to make him fall in love. The days passed, and Mona was anxious, since that day was already the Halloween party, and she had obtained the little witch costume that Medaka wanted, so she thought about conquering him once and for all. After a while, she arrived at Yuzuru's house and went to change with the other girls, who were surprised that she did not use her mummy costume, although Asahi was happy for her, since that costume seemed very ridiculous to her. Haruno, for her part, had also changed, but into something much more covered, since it was a full-body ghost that apparently was in fashion. Shortly after, the girls went ahead of her, so they left Mona alone while she finished changing, and her zipper had just gotten stuck, so she tried to look for help to close it. On the other hand, Medaka had also just changed into his ghost costume, which by the coincidences of life was exactly the same as Haruno's. And precisely for that reason, Mona ended up confusing him with her, and well, she pulled him into the room so he could close the zipper. At that point, Medaka had already seen everything. Therefore, he tried to calm down, close the zipper, and pretend that he was never there. But well, he could not, since it cost him so much effort to close the zipper that Mona thought that he was lacking air. So she opened his hood and saw Medaka himself down there. Clearly, it had not been a minor problem, since he had seen her entire back, and so it would not happen again. Mona tied a little knot on Haruno, since she was not going to endure another accident like this. After this, Mona kept away from Medaka, since the embarrassment had not yet passed. However, she also did not want the party to end just like that, so she thought that giving him a photo of herself was a good idea. But well, he could delete it like the last one, so she regretted it immediately. Luckily for her, Sho called everyone for a mummy contest, in which the winners would be photographed for the memory, and being a memory, Medaka would have no other choice but to keep said photo. So she decided to participate with him. Unfortunately, first she needed to get him as her partner in the draw, but well, she was not the only one who wanted Medaka, since Asahi was also after him. So as soon as Medaka drew number 8, they tried to look for said number. By coincidences of life, Haruno sent said number flying when picking, so both Mona and Asahi ran after it and caught it at the same time. Clearly neither of them wanted to let go of it, but it was noticeable that Asahi was not even trying hard to take it away, only that she did not want to rip it out of her hands too. Rough. Therefore, Mona played dirty to get it, and did so by saying that Medaka was watching her, which was not true, but just mentioning his name made Asahi get nervous and lose her strength. Thanks to this, Mona got ball number 8 and teamed up with Medaka. Now she only had to win the competition, but since she had to be the mummified one, Medaka had to wrap her with paper, which was quite difficult, since he got very nervous every time he felt her figure with the paper. Besides, he was also dangerously close to touching her, so Medaka decided to do it, however, since anyway, it was not like he cared much about that competition. Mona, for her part, got angry with Medaka for not being able to do it right, so she showed him how it was done, but not even then did Medaka pay attention to her. Therefore, Mona tried to force him to squeeze regardless of whether he touched her or not, which in the end did end end Medaka's control. So he gave up and they ended up losing the game. This frustrated her quite a bit, but then she saw that the girls were asking Medaka for photos without much effort, and he accepted without saying anything. So she also wanted a photo with him, although with her it was not so simple, since Mona did cause little things in Medaka's mind, and that is why he had to refuse so that impure thoughts would not invade his mind. Due to this, our waifu got very angry, so she called him a dummy while the group photo was being taken. And, well, the next day Mona was still angry, so Medaka went to his friends to ask them for help, since this time he felt he had messed up with Mona. They told him that nothing was wrong, to chill, since it was easy to take a photo with her. But instead of that, well, he had rejected her, so they told him to apologize to her, and that she only wanted to be kind. However, Medaka was not ready yet, so he ran away as soon as he saw her, which worried Mona a little, since she was not actually angry, but worried because her attitude at the party had ruined all her efforts. Due to this, Mona started looking for a way to recover her half-decent relationship with Medaka. And, for her good luck, the teacher sent the two of them to clean. So Mona took advantage and used her attributes to get Medaka's attention while she cleaned. However, we already know that this only scared him away because of his religion, so Mona, well, tried to stop him. In the attempt, she stepped on the bucket and ended up soaking him completely, so Medaka had to stay. But, well, he was not talking much, so to speak, so Mona felt like her heart was breaking. To fix things, she apologized to him, since she did not want to get upset. But, well, she had done so because he had denied her a photo. However, Medaka also apologized, since it was not because of her that he did not want to take a photo, but rather that the problem was the same, that, well, he hated cameras. This calmed our waifu down a lot, since she confirmed that Medaka was not actually angry with her. So in the end, both returned to normal, although later we see that this guy at home tried to test what it would be like to put a photo of him with Mona as wallpaper, and in the end it was much more embarrassing than he imagined, so again he deleted it immediately. It seems like things are progressing, right? The next day, Mona's friend named Tomo wrote to her, since she had just arrived in Tokyo, so it was the perfect opportunity to meet. However, Mona did not want them to do it at school, since she did not intend to risk having them see her blush over a man, so she met her super far from there. Later, at school, Medaka's classmates were trying to invite him to plans to bring Mona along as usual, but, well, he refused and refused. Asahi, for her part, was spying on him, but when she left, she dropped her ID badge and, well, Medaka found it, so he went to return it to her. Meanwhile, Asahi's friend told her that she, well, had to be more aggressive, since Mona had too much advantage in the race of love, and just then Medaka arrived to give her her ID badge. So, Minami did not waste this opportunity and asked Medaka what thing he was going to eat. Upon hearing that he was going to eat a bun from the store, she sent Asahi to treat him to it as thanks for returning her ID badge, since it was the perfect opportunity to get closer to him to try to steal a kiss. Asahi clearly did not have the courage to do it, so her first flirtation was asking him if he liked bread, literally, to which Medaka replied, yes, but well, it just stayed there. Then Asahi realized that if she continued being so nervous, she was not going to achieve anything, so she covered his eyes to not see him direct. Thanks to this, she was able to keep her nerves under control, so she told him that they had not seen each other much on Halloween, and that is why she wanted to play trick-or-treat with him. But since Medaka did not have candy, she gave him a kiss as a trick, although Medaka never found out what she had done, since he was still blindfolded. After classes, Tomo was chilling, making a lot of boys fall in love at the same time. Just then, Mona finally arrived for the big reunion, so Tomo left all the boys, super excited. It turns out that this girl had the habit of making every man she saw fall in love, since it was extremely easy for her thanks to her large attributes. Mona, for her part, had always been the one who seemed cutest to everyone, so she gathered most of the men at her feet. But since in the end she always rejected everyone, well, Tomo took charge of consoling them, although not for long, since there was a lot of demand, so she jumped from boyfriend to boyfriend. That caused neither of them to know true love. But when Tomo asked Mona if she had fallen in love in Tokyo, well, she hesitated for a second, so Tomo had her serious doubts if her denial was sincere. By coincidences of life, Medaka passed by the restaurant where Mona and Tomo were, since he had gone to Sho's house to play, and well, it was his turn to get the food. Just seeing him, Mona became super nervous, so Tomo realized immediately that he was the one chosen by her friend. Therefore, she sat him down and started asking if he was her boyfriend or something similar. Mona told her no, and that he did not even interest her. Then Tomo started to flirt with him to see if what she said was true, and the best way to make Medaka nervous was with her large chest. So when this guy asked her to put those melons away, Tomo asked him to give her a hand with the zipper, since she had greasy hands. This should be an easy job for him, since it was only zipping up a jacket. However, her breasts were so big that it was not that easy, so to speak. And well, this has always made Medaka even more nervous. But just then, they called him to pick up his order, so he managed to escape with his chastity safe. During all this time, Mona had a look of worry that had never been seen on her before, so Tomo assumed that she was indeed madly in love with him, and well, this time he left before Mona could deny it. With this, Mona thought that everything was over. Well, nothing could be further from the reality, since Tomo had entered her same school, so from that moment on, she would have to deal with her for the rest of her school life. As usual, the girls liked Tomo very much, especially because she was a friend of Mona, and well, the boys did too, although in that case because of how cute she was. The only one who did not introduce himself was Medaka, but because he had already met her the previous afternoon, which the boys did not take so well, since he was the real lucky one for finding her by chance. Just then, Tomo demonstrated to everyone how close her relationship was with Mona, caressing her breasts, since now they were bigger than the last time she touched them. So our waifu took her far away to scold her for groping her in that way, since, well, it was a bad habit she kept since middle school, and it had always bothered her that she did it. Tomo told her to calm down since she had only increased her chances with Medaka. However, Mona did not know how to tell her that she was not in love, so she told her reasons for wanting to make him fall in love, which only convinced Tomo more that Mona indeed was in love. To prove it, she started bad-mouthing Medaka, and as soon as she did, well, our waifu defended him, since, for her, he was not that bad, which in woman language means she was dying for him. So Tomo promised to help her realize how in love she was with Medaka. Due to this, as soon as she had the opportunity, she told Mona how. Her attitude changed when she was close to him, and the first thing she highlighted was that she did not eat when she was close to. But well, Mona had already eaten before, so simply well, she was not hungry. Just then, Asahi arrived to talk to her. However, Tomo liked Asahi so much that she threw herself at her. Once she got rid of Tomo, she was finally able to take Mona to a place alone, since she had to confess to her about the kiss, and even though she did not have to do it, she did not want to feel like she was playing dirty, so she confessed to her and left Mona speechless. Just then, Tomo was also there being nosy, so she also caught the gossip, which seemed like a bombshell to her, since it seemed like the perfect reason for Mona to get her act together. That is why she gave a golden opportunity to her friend, organizing a little welcome party for herself. However, well, Mona only said yes and went home to process what she had just heard, since if both had kissed, there was a possibility that they would start dating. Although, well, she also did not say they were a couple, and it is not like that affects her queen bee ego. However, when she thought about Medaka as Asahi's boyfriend, well, she got quite annoyed, so she spent the whole night intrigued for not understanding her own feelings. Due to the sleepless night, the next day she appeared looking like death, but well, the most important part was just coming, meaning Medaka's arrival. So Asahi took the lead greeting him first, although Mona woke up and did not let them get too far ahead of her. Then, since both were fighting for Medaka's attention, Tomo revealed where they were going to go, which, well, was an amusement park known for being the park of love, meaning that it was the perfect setting for Mona to crown her relationship. Once they arrived at the amusement park, Mona was super attentive, since she had to worry about Asahi, so she would not do anything weird, and well, also about Tomo, since it was obvious that she was plotting something. Just then, Minami told them that she wanted to go to the roller coaster, so everyone went to that attraction. But the reason why Minami wanted to go there was not only because she liked it, but because she already had everything prepared with Asahi, so she could ask Medaka to accompany her, since according to her, she was scared of that attraction. Medaka simply could not refuse. Then Mona thought that they were getting ahead of her. However, she could not say anything. Otherwise, she would look desperate for wanting to enter the roller coaster with Medaka. Due to this, she was willing to watch how Asahi stole her man right in her face. But well, Tomo did not let that happen, so she told them that she could not enter the roller coaster with Mona, since it scared her too much. So she asked Medaka to accompany Mona after his ride with Asahi, meaning that she was not going to lose against her then, thanks to the fact that our waifu was also going to get her little trip with Medaka. Anyway, the first to act was going to be Asahi, so she decided to go all out. And when I say all out, well, it was with everything, since as soon as they entered, she asked him to hold her hand so she would not be so scared, which made Medaka very tense. But well, Asahi took charge of holding it very tight, so the experience would be unique. Thanks to this, the waifu came out super excited from the roller coaster, since she had taken a big step. But well, this only made Mona get even more nervous. To top it off, her friends had seen Medaka holding hands with Asahi, which only made our waifu think that they had to do something spectacular, since not only had she given him a kiss, but they had also gone down the roller coaster holding hands. Unfortunately, doing the same was not an option, so instead of doing something to make him fall in love, she decided to rule out if he liked Asahi, so she asked him if he liked her. Medaka remained silent for a while, so Mona started sweating bullets, but in the end, he said no, although he thought he was in a typical cliché Tokyo conversation, so he returned the question, which left Mona speechless, since she said she did not like anyone, but in reality, she suspected that she might like Medaka, so she ended up not saying a peep, and the most awkward silence of all was generated. Medaka, for his part, was quite bummed out, and Mona super distracted, since Medaka had interpreted the silence as something bad when she, well, only did not know what to say. So the atmosphere became very uncomfortable between the two, so they could solve their little problems. Tomo sent them to buy something together. However, at the stand there was a couple's promo, so they decided to pretend they were a couple. Up to here, everything was cool, but well, they still had to prove that they were actually a couple. So the owner asked them to do something that only a couple could do, something like a kiss. So Medaka did not want to do it, but Mona did, since it was a great opportunity to kiss him without him being able to refuse. Medaka froze, seeing that Mona was approaching for real, so he practically resigned himself. However, in the end, it was she who stopped, so she ended up confessing to the shopkeeper that they had lied when saying they were a couple. After that, our protagonist calmed down and returned together with the others, so they continued with the tour of the amusement park. But after this great opportunity, Asahi took the lead and started taking Medaka everywhere, whether it was the haunted house, to the attractions, and even to eat. So Mona did not have a single chance to be close to Medaka. Due to that, Tomo warned her that she had to be bolder, or otherwise she could not win against Asahi. And if this happened, she would not have her dose of fun, since Tomo did all this to see Mona's nervous face. The latter believed that she was only bothering her, but not at all, since Tomo in the past knew her as a girl who always put on a fake face to please others. That always bothered Tomo, but when she saw her reacting honestly for Medaka, it made her want to keep doing it, since for the first time in her life she was honest with her reactions. These words left Mona thinking, since she did not expect Tomo to pay so much attention to her. However, she was also ashamed, since she had not realized until now that her queen bee image had disappeared at times when she was together with Medaka. To top it off, while she was thinking, she ended up falling behind, and a group of people bumped into her, so her cell phone fell into the fountain. Due to this, she lost her classmates and could not communicate with them. But things can always get worse. So a pair of guys who were completely out of touch with reality appeared in front of her while her friends realized that Mona had disappeared, so they divided into groups to look for her. However, Asahi could not follow Medaka in his search, since she could not run with an ice cream in her hand. Thanks to that, Medaka went alone to look for Mona and ended up finding her, while the two clueless guys were trying to take her away, so he yelled at them to leave her alone, which Mona took advantage of to break free and tell them that he was her boyfriend. Since Medaka had the eyes of a psychopath, they decided to leave her alone. But as soon as they left, she turned very red, since seeing something so heroic from Medaka had made her red and hot. Two things she did not like at all, since it does not go with her queen bee personality. Medaka, for his part, asked her why she did not answer the phone. Then Mona told him about the accident that had happened to her. Obviously, Medaka found it ridiculous, however. Karma hit him immediately, since exactly the same thing happened to him. Due to this, they had no choice but to walk around until they found the others. But well before that, Mona realized that Medaka wanted to get on the Ferris wheel. Our waifu was not sure whether to enter or not, since it was a quite enclosed space and alone. But he looked so excited that she ended up telling him to enter with the excuse that from above they could look for the others. Once inside, Mona got super nervous, which was too rare for her. But while Medaka saw the amusement park like a kid in a candy store, Mona started thinking about all the times she had been in that situation because of Medaka. And in reality, there had been several, so she ended up accepting with much embarrassment that indeed she showed herself just as she was when she was with him. This had no explanation for Mona, but then she remembered that Tomo attributed everything to Medaka being her first love. But that was still too soon for Mona to accept it. To prove to herself that she felt nothing, she decided to approach Medaka and keep calm. But as soon as she stood up, the seat moved, and she almost fell on top of the boy, so her face turned red, and for the first time, she saw herself with that expression on her face thanks to the glass of the Ferris wheel. Medaka immediately realized that Mona was acting a little weird, so he confessed to her that it was not the first time he had seen her like that. This made Mona want to crawl under a rock. However, Medaka was not saying it to make her feel bad or to tell her something like that, like she looked ugly, but quite the opposite, since when she acted weird was when his heart raced the most and when she seemed cuter than normal to him. These words accelerated Mona's heart even more, so she started to suspect that she was falling in love, but well, she did not want to accept it even so, since it was Medaka who had to fall at her feet. However, he was happy because by chance he saw his classmates, and just that smile was enough to end all the excuses and lies that Mona told herself. So finally she had no choice but to accept that at her 17 years she had fallen in love for the first time in her life. Due Due to this, Mona remained completely silent, which made Medaka's hair stand on end, since that way she seemed much cuter to him than usual. So all the time it took them to reach the others, the poor guy had spent meditating to not fall for Mona's innate charms. When they finally arrived with their friends, he told them that his phone had been destroyed, and that was why they had taken so long to find them. However, Mona did not look the same, since when Asahi confronted her to ask if she had done something with Medaka, our waifu turned super red. The others did not give it much importance and proposed going to eat before returning home, but Mona did not feel like continuing at the amusement park. Then she told everyone that she was quite tired, and that was why she preferred to return home. Obviously, her friends accepted since most of them could not even say no to her. But on the way, Tomo got nosy to find out why she was acting so weird. Mona tried to tell her that nothing was wrong, but well, it was impossible to hide it. So she confessed that she had gotten like that, since Medaka always realized when her mask fell off for being close to him, and that, not content with this, he also told her that she looked very cute when this happened. And, well, all this was already enough as to make her nervous. But to top it off, she confessed that she realized she was in love, so Tomo was happy for her, since she was taking too long. After going down, she ran to meet Asahi, since she also had to confess to her that she had discovered she was in love, since she, as her rival, had to be, aware that now they were going to fight seriously for Medaka's heart. Asahi felt a little sad, since she would have liked Mona to never realize, since obviously that way it would have been easier. However, it was her fault for separating from Medaka, so she simply told her that she would not lose, since in love, more things matter than looks, who arrived first and who put more effort into it. However, Mona did not intend to lose either, so she gathered all her courage and yelled at Asahi while she was leaving that she would not give up in her fight for Medaka's heart. Unfortunately, on her first day in love, she woke up sick for the first time in her life, so she stayed home and spent her time thinking about what she was going to do from now on, since she still wanted to make Medaka fall in love, but, well, everything she had done never worked. At lunchtime, she called Tomo, since she was very bored at home, which Tomo attributed to Medaka, since if she could not see him, she got bored a lot. Obviously, this was true, but Mona was not going to admit it crazy, so Tomo simply told her that she was going to take her to Medaka so they could talk. When Mona heard this, she went crazy since she was messy and in pajamas, although even, so Medaka got super nervous seeing her. Then Mona thought she was bothering him. However, Medaka was the one who told her that they could talk since it did not bother him, so they started chatting about very normal things, but no matter what they talked about, Mona equally fell more and more in love with Medaka, since just by talking to him, she felt she had the best conversation in the world. This made her realize that if they started dating together, they would be able to talk like that every day. However, her mother entered the room since she heard her talking. Then Mona hid the tablet between her legs so her mother would not find out that she was talking to a boy. Although due to this, Medaka had a clear view of her panties, which indeed was too much for both, so they cut the call. The next day, our protagonist was completely cured, so she resumed her seduction activities so that one day she could have a date with Medaka. She wanted to go shopping, go to the movies, or go to the beach and hold hands. You know, super sweet couple things. With that in mind, she went to school with all the attitude, which made Tomo quite happy. But as soon as she saw Medaka, the nerves returned, so she tried to psych herself up to talk to him naturally. Unfortunately for her, this time Medaka was on fire, since it was he who greeted first, which destroyed the mental stability of our waifu, and that is why she dropped the eraser. Medaka went to pick it up, but in the attempt, he bumped into Mona's hand, which made him super red, although nothing in comparison to Mona, since she was ultra blushed so much that she could not take it anymore, and went home saying she was still sick, so her fight to conquer. Medaka was not over yet, since rather it seemed it had just begun. Well, since this anime interested me a little bit, I checked if its manga had an ending yet, but in reality it has not finished yet, and unfortunately the relationship between Mona and Medaka has advanced almost nothing. Moreover, I even saw that Asahi kissed Medaka in chapter 199, right? So I do not know if we are going to have a rent-a-girlfriend or something similar, but this relationship does not advance at all, even though they already know that they both like each other. But, well, if you like this anime a lot, there might be a part 2 at some point when this manga ends. And that is it, people. As you already know, this was everything that is animated from the anime of Kuroiwa Medaka. So as always, I will try to leave you to similar animes on the end screens. Goodbye.